So before we begin, some of this stuff that we're going through the article is already out of date. We have heard already that the UK government is set to do a U-turn on accepting Ukrainian refugees, which is a good thing because, well, they've been shamed into doing so. But then what do you expect really from our government if you've been following this channel? Like I say, it took a lot of shaming for them by a footballer to get them to feed hungry children. So we cannot be surprised, unfortunately, by this reaction. However, this article is still worth going over and going through because it is shown into a larger picture of the government's new borders and nationality bills, which shows that the safe routes that it wanted to establish are a complete and utter sham. Why? Because this government has become so xenophobic and is so scared of refugees, most probably because, again, of the right wing of their party, and more especially like UKIP or the Reform Party making a surge during the next general election. Indeed, just last Sunday, there was a poll shown that ultimately, if there had been an election held last week, Labour would have wiped the floor with the Tories completely. And Keir Starmer would have had a majority, a very thin majority of about 14, but that means Labour would have just won straight away. And it also shows that there has been long-lasting damage to the Tory party brand, which in the long term is a very good thing. But that's another conversation besides. Anyway, we're going to get into this article about this because I think this is still something very, very important to address in how we're treating refugees, not just from Ukraine, but from elsewhere in the world. So, as always, please do remember to hit that like, share, and subscribe button. And, of course, down below, there are links to my Patreon page and a one-off donation link called Buy Me Coffee, where you can, well, buy me coffee. And, as always, thank you very much to all those people who do support the channel that way. So, on with the show. So, this comes from the Yorkshire Bylines with the title of "The UK's Response to Ukrainian Refugees Shows That Safe Routes Are a Sham." As Russian bombs Kiev and other cities in Ukraine, hundreds of thousands of women and children flee, and British citizens have left, and British reporters are now also leaving. Children are now being handed over to strangers at the Ukraine's borders with Moldova, Bulgaria, or Poland to be cared for by volunteers on the other side, as their parents are required to stay to either fight or because they are essential workers, such as nurses. Those left behind find safety in the very metro stations built to withstand a nuclear war, but not to cater for a conventional one. Almost every other European country has opened its borders to Ukraine and suspended the need for visas. Many have even gone further, setting up welcome stations, free transport, and access to work if they wish. And the UK stands very conspicuously alone in its refusal to offer any assistance. It states that the Ukrainians currently in the UK may have their visas extended, but it wouldn't break international law to send them back a citizen to a war or persecution. And the jobs that Ukrainians are currently filling are still on our shortage list, and this is hardly a concession. It also indicated that it might provide visas for family members of UK citizens, but this excludes all adult family members other than spouses or relative cared for by British citizens or medical reasons. So it would again not include children over 18, dependency or otherwise, or elderly relatives of the non-British applicant, such as elderly parents-in-law. And inevitably then, families will either be split up or remain together in danger. The UK government has closed the consular offices other than obviously in Lviv, and where the applications could be lodged. So Lviv is 550 dangerous kilometers away from not only Kiev, but also close to the Polish border, where no application is currently needed to enter. While the government still permits visas to be made from adjacent safe countries and has developed some systems to try and expedite the process for families, the necessary biometric information can only be provided at Warsaw, Budapest, or Bucharest. While other UK visas, such as those from the temporary work visas, can be applied from the Ukraine, at least theoretically, It is largely a bureaucratic process. It is almost impossible to complete and now are even a low priority according to the government's own website. It is likely, therefore, that there will be fewer Ukrainians reach the UK through safe legal routes prior to the Russian invasion. On Saturday, the government announced that it would be sending more military and medical supplies to Ukraine, but made no further announcements or comments as to how it would best help those fleeing Ukraine, either through assistance to those countries connected, supporting the refugees, or by taking its share of some of those who might want to come to the UK. It is sticking to its line that refugees should remain in the first safe country that they come to, and that it is not indicated that it will even introduce other routes to the UK. Ukraine is not a member of NATO, and the UK and other NATO allies believe that to defend Ukraine through NATO would be unhelpful and may participate in a nuclear war. However, in 1994, the Russian Federation, the US, and the UK signed an agreement with the UK to protect its security in exchange for Ukraine decommissioning its nuclear arsenal. The UK government does retain its responsibility to the people of Ukraine, and if it does not wish to engage militarily, it has an even greater responsibility to support the wider international efforts to manage the consequences and the humanitarian disaster that is now unfolding. And according to the Office of National Statistics back in 2019, there are only about 38,000 Ukrainian-born nationals living in the UK. The historical, economic, and cultural ties between the two countries are fairly recent and not that particularly strong. And the UK is obviously unlikely to be the preferred destination for many Ukrainians, especially since we have left the EU, and most Ukrainians were fixing their hopes on the future of becoming members. The offering an open of unconditional support to those needing refuge now or even the long term is very unlikely to result in the many applications and the public. And as far as can be understood from the media, that would give every support to the government of opening its borders to those fleeing Ukraine. The government's, of course, very restrictive response is therefore unfathomable, even at the cost to the UK that it is likely to be very low, but the political capital very high. It cannot bring itself to do the right thing. It has failed to provide safe routes for people fleeing Ukraine or Afghanistan previously when the humanitarian need was irrefutable and evident to all, including most skeptics. For years now, the government has refused to provide safe routes at the scale needed to meet the current refuge need, or even take in the share of comparisons with other advanced economies. Its response to the Ukraine suggests that it may refuse to provide asylum at all, and has done for thousands of other peoples who served Britain's interest in Afghanistan. For many months, the government promised safe routes to the UK for Afghans, which such as those who had helped the British government, or with the achieving scholars who had studied in the UK, and they were at risk of of having done so, particularly women. It then obviously quietly removed that promise from its website and then referred to it no more. It looks as though the Home Office will offer nothing to Ukrainian refugees, forced to do so by public demand, and then that will delay and very likely make false promises until the moment for rescue has passed. The justification for punishment of irregular arrival refugees proposed in the Nationalities and Borders Bill is predicated on there being another illegitimate means of gaining entry. Had the government intended to create or even authorize routes, it would now have been the time. Yet there is not even a hint, let alone any concrete proposal, to indicate that there has been such addressing in relation to Ukraine. Increasingly, though, it looks as though the authorized routes referred to in the Nationality and Borders Bill are a complete sham, with no other purpose than to justify the cruelties to refugee policies. Yeah, this is straight up, and to be honest, it's really shameful. It really is, and I can only, again, as a British citizen, I can only offer my my sympathy to any Ukrainian wanting to obviously flee their country. I can only offer my serious sympathies that unfortunately the UK is not being as welcoming as other countries are, which, to be honest, is very much a moment of national shame for all of us here in the UK. Now, however, I did say at the beginning that has apparently been turned around and that there is a U-turning coming, so that probably will change in the next day or so of what will happen. But we'll see how that situation does unfurl. But needless to say, this is all interconnected and all goes back to Brexit, of being the government being forced by small, very extreme right-wing groups like UKIP and etc., pushing the Tory party further into a more hard right stance to basically go, we've got to end all this refugee stuff, and especially going after like the European Union, even though there were rules that we could have used to like control immigration. Again, but again, that goes into discussing Brexit and a whole other host of issues. But yeah, we're not going to do that today. But needless to say, thank you as always very much for watching. Please do remember to hit that like, share, and subscribe button. And of course, down below there are links to my Patreon page and a donation link called Buy Me Coffee, where you can, well, buy me coffee. And as always, thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you all next time.